Good evening, everybody. What a pleasure to be with all of you tonight. What an honor to be here for this incredible evening. And I can't think of a more important time that we all must stand together for Israel. We must not waver. We must be here. I now want to show a very special video. This is our own Mort Klein being interviewed on the Mike Huckabee Show. Please take a look at the screens, everybody.
Welcome back. One of the things we sure love about this show is the music that we get to enjoy. Thanks to Trey Corley and the Music City Connection. Would you give them a great big hand and thank them? Martin Klein is the child of Holocaust survivors. He's had a distinguished career in biostatistics at UCLA. But Mort Klein is best known as the president of the oldest Zionist organization on the planet, the Zionist Organization of America. The ZOA is the premier organization of advocacy for the rights of Jews to live securely in their indigenous homeland of Israel. He's been named one of the 5 most influential Jewish leaders in the U.S. He's often been cited for having accurately predicted the disaster of the Oslo Accords, in which Israel gave up land for peace and ended up with less peace and less land. Please welcome the president of the ZOA, Martin Klein. Martin, so glad to have you here.
Great to be with you.
The horrific terrorist attack on the Jewish people of Israel has shaken the world, but yet we see these crazy things happening, especially on the most elite college campuses, where people act like they're supporting Hamas, and it's Israel's fault. This has to be troubling for you as a Jewish leader.
It is shocking. And one of the reasons this is happening, I believe, is that the students, the kids, and really many people in America do not know the truth of the Arab-Islamic war against Israel, the Jews, and the West. They believe that Israel stole this land from a sovereign Arab country called Palestine. There's never been an Arab country called Palestine. It was a region. In fact, Palestine is a Roman name. How could it be an Arab country if it was named after a Roman name? In fact, Arabs can't even pronounce the letter P. They can't even say Palestine. They say Palestine. And this was illegally controlled by Britain in 1917. And in 1937, they offered 95% of Palestine to the Arabs, 5% to the Jews for a 2-state solution, 5% for the Jews. The Arabs turned it down. In 1948, the United Nations offered half of Palestine to the Arabs, half to the Jews. They turned it down. There were offers of statehood in 2000, 2001, 2008, 2010. They've been offered a state 4 times in the last 20 years, 8 times in the last 80 years, rejected every time. When I asked prime ministers, how could they reject these extraordinary offers, where, by the way, they offer them almost everything that they asked for, they told me that the Arafat and then Abbas, and before Arafat, they refused to sign an agreement that said we accept Israel as a Jewish state. They said we will never sign that. So the issue is not about land. It's not about statehood. It's about destroying Israel. In fact, Hamas's charter, Article 7, calls for the murder of every Jew in the world. Article 7. Article 13 for the destruction of Israel. And your audience should know, the co-founder of Hamas, Mahmoud al-Zahar, this week on internet said, we want the world to know this is not just about the Jews of Israel. They're first, but next we're coming after the despicable Christians. This is a week ago. And then after we get rid of the Christians, then we're going to impose Sharia law, Islamic law, onto the whole world. And Al-Azhar University, which is the most distinguished place of learning for Islam, issued a fatwa on October 19th, a religious edict, saying it is legitimate to kill every Jew in Israel. This is a religious war where they will not accept non-Muslims in their midst, and their goal is ultimately to establish a caliphate, an Islamic caliphate throughout the whole world.
They control 644 times the landmass that Israel has? I know you've got a map. I want you to hold that up.
The orange are the 23 Arab countries. The yellow, which you cannot see, is Israel, which is smaller than the state of New Jersey. The Arab world is 600 to 700 times the size of Israel, and yet they're saying Israel must give up more land. Israel is offered more land. They won't take it if it means accepting a Jewish state. In fact, Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, has refused for 13 years to even sit down and negotiate. He won't negotiate. And yesterday, he publicly stated, we will not give up an inch of any part of Palestine, meaning Israel, or Jerusalem. They have no interest in peace. They have an interest in destroying the Jewish state first. And as Mahmoud al-Zahar said, co-founder of Hamas, first the Saturday people, next the Sunday people.
And I think Americans aren't aware
No.
that the target doesn't end with the Jews. What can we do? I mean, you have been one of the most outspoken voices, crying in the wilderness sometimes. But you've been bold and talking about that this is coming from a long time ago. What can the average American watching us now, what can they do?
Well, it's hard because they have to learn the truth of the Arab-Islamic war against the Jews in the West. One of the big problems is Israeli officials, I have to criticize them, Jewish leaders and rabbis have refused to tell the truth about these issues, that there's no occupation of Arab land, there's never been an Arab country of Palestine, it was a region, that Jerusalem is not holy to Muslims. How about this? The Quran never mentions the word Jerusalem. In the Jewish holy book, 700 times. The majority of people living in Jerusalem from the mid-1800s until now have been Jews. And yet, when I ask Israeli officials to make these things clear, that this is an interest to destroy the state of Israel. In fact, let me show you another picture. This is the emblem commissioned by the Palestinian Authority now for the Palestinian Authority. You notice it's a shape of all of Israel with a keffiyeh over all of it, not just the West Bank and Gaza and Eastern Jerusalem. Arafat in the center, a Kalashnikov rifle. Is this the commissioned emblem that one would choose if you want peace with the Jewish state? They show clearly their goal is Israel's destruction first, and then they want to go after America. You know, Iran says repeatedly, death to America, death to Israel. Death to the big Satan, America, death to the little Satan, Israel.
You're one of the most effective and important voices that we have on this subject. It's why I love the ZOA. I love what you do. I love your effectiveness. And I want to say to our audience, the Zion Organization of America, the ZOA, is the most effective as well as the oldest pro-Zionist organization in the world. I hope you want to learn more about them and access volumes of information about Israel and what Morton Klein has talked about. Here's how to do it. If you go to Huckabee.tv, we will link you directly to ZOA and the conversations that we've had here.
What an amazing segment and what a perfect setup to what is to come now. Mort, that was just really amazing. Showing the map, too, was so powerful to see it and to visually be able to explain it to so many people. And I know Huckabee has also been over to Israel many times, so it's fantastic. I want to now turn to the screens very quickly before we bring up the great Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, of course, who is chair of the House Republican Conference. She's going to be introducing our next guest, but before we bring her up, we have a short video from Miriam Adelson. Her and her late husband are probably some of the greatest philanthropists ever, certainly the most stalwart supporters of Israel. And if all of you could look at this beautiful message that she delivered.
Speaker Johnson, Mike, welcome to the family. We of the ZOA are so proud to have you with us today, to honor you, to embrace you. I said it's not only on my behalf, but also on behalf of my beloved late husband, Sheldon, whose spirit continues to inspire the ZOA, just as his name graces, alongside mine, the award that you are receiving. Like any good family, the ZOA has roots. It goes back 126 years, more than 6 generations. In this great United States. Like any good family, the ZOA brings all kinds of folks together around the table, Jews and Christians, Republican and Democrats, liberals and conservatives, Northerners and Southerners. And like any good family, the ZOA has a common cause and a common destiny. We are patriotic Americans who recognize the profound promise of the State of Israel, not just as the reborn, eternal homeland of the Jewish people, but as the greatest of U.S. allies. And as patriotic Americans, we work hard to make good on that promise, to protect and to cherish it always. We know that this sacred mission is in your soul too, Mike. It stems from your love of the Bible, in which God promised the Holy Land to his people. And it stems from your love for your fellow Americans who, in a turbulent Middle East, can always count on Israel to provide a safe harbor. In your short time as Speaker, and may you have a long and blessed tenure, you moved fast to secure Israel the aid it needs as it fights war on several fronts of terrorism. And you matched military support with moral support by helming a resolution that condemned Hamas terrorism and demanded the release of hostages in Gaza. Israel's war is not yet won. The Jewish homeland is not yet the secure haven it is meant to be. But Israelis, as they fight to survive and to be victorious, do so in the knowledge that America has their backs, and that this is in large part due to the ZOA and to elected officials such as yourself. So, thank you, Mike. Consider yourself at home, among friends, among family. Mazel tov and good luck.
She always gives the best speeches. I love when I hear from her. We're going to now bring up in just a moment the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. By the way, I love the fact how great, as soon as he was sworn in, none of the fanfare, none of the other things, he got right to business, and his first resolution was to support Israel. So how beautiful that he is here tonight. That says so much about him. And to introduce him is someone who is also an incredible, incredible supporter of Israel. She has really been taking the fight, especially of late, to go after anti-Semitism on campuses, on college campuses. Please give a big round of applause to someone who's an enormous, stalwart supporter of Israel, our friend. She is the chair of the House Republican Conference and the great Congresswoman Elise Stefanik.
Thank you, Rita, for that kind introduction. And thank you to Mort Klein and the ZOA for your tireless work building a strong, effective, and respected Jewish voice around the world. I also would like to recognize Dr. Miriam Adelson for her steadfast support of the Jewish state of Israel, the ZOA, the Jewish people, and critically important global medical research. As a dedicated and committed physician, philanthropist, humanitarian, and businesswoman, Dr. Adelson is a titan both here in the United States and in Israel. We grow stronger from her strength, we move forward with her vision, and we watch in awe as she opens up her heart through her work across our communities. And while Dr. Adelson was not able to join us tonight, I am truly humbled by the opportunity to present the Dr. Miriam Adelson and Sheldon Adelson Defender of Israel Award on her behalf to my friend, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. A man of deep faith, Mike epitomizes what it means to be a servant leader. A faithful Christian, dedicated husband and proud father, and deeply respected constitutional lawyer, Mike has dedicated his life to preserving America's greatest principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mike is strong, tough, and fair, and above all else, Mike is principled and he is kind. He is exactly the leader House Republicans, America, and Israel need right now. We have all seen the images and heard the firsthand accounts of the truly unfathomable brutality committed by the hands of Hamas terrorists against Israelis. These gut-wrenching atrocities are the work of pure evil and serve as a stark reminder that Israel is currently fighting not only for their right to exist, but for the rights of Jewish people around the world. We mourn for the mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, grandparents, and children, including babies, who were tortured, killed, beheaded, raped, and some kidnapped, taken hostage by these abhorrent monsters. We share in their grief and we cry out with them. The world must know that the United States stands with Israel today, tomorrow, and forever. No one took up that mantle more than Speaker Mike Johnson. In his first act after earning the Speaker's gavel, Mike put a resolution on the House floor condemning the barbaric attacks, showing the chamber's strong support for Israel. His first trip as Speaker was to the Republican Jewish Coalition's conference in Las Vegas. And when hundreds of thousands of people came to Washington, D.C. and marched on the National Mall for Israel, Mike addressed the crowd and took on the blatant anti-Semitism in this country. He passed a bipartisan $14 billion aid package, ensuring Israel has the resources it needs to defend itself and eradicate Hamas once and for all. And just last week, he prioritized the No Funds for Iranian Terrorism Act, immediately freezing Joe Biden's billions in ransom payments to the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. When I nominated Mike on behalf of House Republicans on the House floor for Speaker, I quoted Galatians 6:9, quote, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." Under Mike Johnson's leadership, America will always stand with Israel, and we will never give up. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating the Speaker of the House, the recipient of the Miriam Adelson Award, Mike Johnson.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you. We're so grateful and humbled to be with you tonight. We do feel at home, as Dr. Adelson said. We always do with our Jewish friends and our allies. And we are so just grateful to be here. I know you've had a long night, and I don't want to speak long, but I want you to hear from me and hear from my heart. This is a deep conviction that we have. And I want to thank Elise for the kind introduction, and Mort and Rena and everyone and all of you. It's just a tremendous honor to be invited here tonight and to receive this award, the Dr. Miriam and Sheldon Adelson Defender of Israel Award. It means so much to us. It's kind of a surreal thing for me to be in this position and to be with you tonight and to be receiving this honor. My wife Kelly and I have made multiple trips to Israel. We love Israel. I've been invited, yes. We have developed lifelong, dear friendships there, relationships there in Israel. And every time I return, I'm reminded of our solemn commitment to one another, our nations, and how a strong U.S.-Israel relationship is good for the entire world. It's something that we must maintain. See, our two countries are bound together by our shared values and our deep religious convictions, of course. It's the Judeo-Christian foundation that built America. And this is one of the reasons why our nation and Israel have been able to enjoy such harmony and friendship over the years. It's critically important to us for many reasons, not just because of diplomacy and international relations and all the things that bind us to our other allies around the world, but because for so many of us, this is also a matter of faith. And today, we are heartbroken. We are shocked that our Jewish friends are facing an unprecedented level of attacks and persecution. And not since the World War II era have we seen what we're seeing now. This truly, in Israel, what's happened with Hamas and the terrorists, the brutal attacks on the people there, the unspeakable evil that's been suffered, it's difficult to describe. In Congress, I arranged to have a screening of the video, the horrific 49-minute video that many of you have seen. Yes, we brought the Republican and Democrat members of the House into an auditorium and played that shocking film. And I would tell you that you could have heard a pin drop in that auditorium, and there was sobbing. The only sound that you could hear was our colleagues mourning what they were seeing, sobbing, crying, and many had to get up and walk out of the theater. And I have to confess to you that I was one of them. I could not sit through the horror that we were viewing. But it's the unspeakable evil that our friends are facing in Israel, and even now here shamefully in our own country. But because, as I said in my speech at the March for Israel on the National Mall, it is unacceptable for Jewish businesses to face violence and vandalism and threats. It is unacceptable, yes. It's unacceptable for universities to allow Hamas apologists to assault and accost Jewish students on campus. It is unacceptable for any political leader in this nation to give credence to dangerous anti-Semitic rhetoric. I want to tell you how frustrating and disheartening that last point is to all of us. There are members of the United States Congress who routinely now spout Hamas propaganda in talking points. You all see it. Of course, these individuals have a right to free speech. We understand that. And ultimately, they have to answer to their voters in every 2 years. But the problem is that in using the rhetoric of genocidal terrorists, they are giving political cover and adding legitimacy to these ideas. We should not stand for that. This phrase that they repeat, from the river to the sea, is, of course, we all know, an explicit call for the eradication of Israel. But it's become popular with activists and sadly young people now, many of those whose hatred for Israel is tragically the byproduct of social media misinformation. And they simply don't know what it is they're talking about, obviously. All of this is why we must continue to boldly declare our support for Israel and the Jewish people across the world and continue to educate others on the threats that the Jewish people face every single day. We must counter their bigotry and hatred with the power of love and prayer. And we must meet them with force when necessary. And it's necessary right now. I want you to hear from me, from the Speaker of the House, that in Congress, we will continue to support our dear friend and ally. We have already passed bipartisan aid package out of the House that you heard about. We understood that Israel's right to exist is under threat, and we acted swiftly right out of the blocks as soon as I had the gavel to pass a standalone bill that met their needs and reflected the urgency of the moment. We will continue to thank you. We will continue to pressure the Senate and the White House to follow suit and to pass this critical aid because the timing is urgent. I've spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu myself. I've spoken to the Israeli Defense Minister. I've spoken to our ambassadors and Herzog. I've spoken to my counterpart there, Speaker Ohana, in the Knesset. And I'm honored to tell you that he's invited me to come and address the Knesset, and I intend to do that as soon as possible. And I will tell you this, we will stand with Israel until this conflict is resolved. And I think all of us know what it will take to resolve this conflict. We welcome the return of the hostages from captivity in Gaza, of course, and we will not yield until every hostage is returned safely and the threats against Israel cease to exist. That's right. That's our commitment. It is truly a great honor for us to be with you tonight, for me to receive this award, to hear the kind words from Dr. Adelson, and to have the encouragement and support of all of you. We are in a battle, as the Prime Minister said, of good versus evil, of light versus darkness, of civilization versus barbarism. We cannot say that clearly or more often enough. The people of this country need to understand what's at stake. We do. Your leaders and your friends in Congress understand it, and we stand with you arm in arm, and we will do this until the end. God bless you, God bless Israel, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Everybody, could you please stand?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Miriam Ben-Ami. My son, Yosef Chaim Ohana, who's only 23 years old, is being held captive for almost 2 months. At the end of the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah, I received a phone call telling me that terrorists had attacked the Nova Music Festival in Kibbutz Re'im, which Yosef Chaim was attending. I was panicked. I received that phone call. I tried to call Yosef Chaim. After not being able to reach him, I called his friend, Daniel, who was at the Nova Music Festival together with my son. Daniel told me that when the shooting started, he and Yosef Chaim immediately began to help the wounded, entering an abandoned ambulance on the side of the road to search for medical supplies for the wounded. Suddenly, shoulder missiles were fired into the crowd, and everyone scattered in different directions for cover. Daniel was hiding under a car as he raised his head to see what was going on. He saw my son Yosef Chaim hiding in a close-by car. That was the last time he saw Yosef Chaim, because the car that Daniel was hiding under was hit by one of the shoulder missiles. Daniel managed to survive the attack, escaping with sharpel in his hand. My son Yosef Chaim was kidnapped and taken hostage. The Israeli army appointed 2 female officers to my family to advise us of the situation. On October 8, my family received a call confirming that Yosef Chaim was one of the hostages and that he was still alive. I'm a single mother of 4 children. Yosef Chaim is my oldest. His younger brother passed away from a disease a few years back. Yosef has a 13-year-old sister and a 21-year-old brother. I love Yosef Chaim with all my heart. Yosef is a guy with a good heart who cares about others He is loved by his family and friends and by everyone who knows him. He is a great brother and often would bring the family together for game nights while he cooked for us, played music and danced. He loves to dance and party and was doing just that the morning of the Nova Music Festival. When I needed a financial help, Yosef Chaim helped me without hesitation. Once, when I needed to cover a debt, he left me money in an envelope. On the envelope, he wrote, "Mom, never stop smiling." His only wish for me is that I always smile. But it's hard for me now to smile when I can see my child. Yosef's friends love him so much. They organized donation and made shirts and signs for him. They are in contact with me and support me in everything. But it will take more than friends to bring Yosef Chaim home and all the hostages. The organization Hostages and Missing Family Forum in Israel has been equally invaluable for me and all the families. We must not allow one more mother in the world to feel this way. With God's help, we must do everything to ensure that this never happens again in the world. We must use every effort to ensure that all the hostages are returned. Thank you for all your support, and may God bless you. God bless America, and God bless the Jewish people and the state of Israel. Thank you.
I now want to bring up Dr. Chiron Skinner. She is the former director of policy planning at the U.S. Department of State, and she will be introducing our great ZOA National President, Mort Klein. Please give a big round of applause to Chiron Skinner, who is a huge supporter of ZOA.
I think most of you probably figured out I'm African American. But what you don't know, I'm a Zionist. Thank you. Mr. Mort Klein is an award-winning activist on behalf of Israel and Jewish causes at home and abroad, as well as a leading voice on combating anti-Semitism globally, while painfully and truthfully making us aware of anti-Semitism throughout the United States. The Wall Street Journal has called Mr. Klein an outsized figure in the American Jewish struggle. He leans in to controversy. Sometimes I wish he wouldn't, but he always does, like taking on BLM, BDM, and with me, he has exposed and written about the anti-Semitism of Congress's squad. Have you heard of them? And their acolytes. And sadly, the anti-Semitism within the African American community. For his efforts, Mr. Klein was presented with the Zionist Organization of the World Award for the outstanding leadership in 2020 in Switzerland, with Miriam Adelson presenting that award. Congratulations. When the history of Jewish American advocacy to make America live up to its promise is finally written, Mort's name will be right there. When the history is finally written of brave Americans who defend Israel during turbulent times like these, Mort's name will be right there. When the history is written about those who have worked quietly and tirelessly to reestablish the Black-Jewish Alliance for justice, I'll be noted a little bit, but Mort will be on page 1. I think you get the picture of what I'm saying, so let's just get to the point. Please join me in a warm round of applause for Mr. Mort Klein, my friend, my brother, and fellow Zionist.
Well, wow. Chiron, thank you so much for coming all the way from California, from Pepperdine University, where she is a full professor. Prior to that, she was a full professor at Carnegie Mellon University. And she did yeoman's work in the State Department as director of policy planning there for many, many years. And she's one of the smartest people, one of the most eloquent people I've really ever known in this business. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to shorten my remarks. In our Passover Haggadah, we read every Pesach, we read this: in each and every generation they rise up against the Jews to destroy us. And the Holy One, blessed be He, God Almighty, rescues us from their hands. That's been true throughout our Jewish history. We were slaves in Egypt. We survived. Haman attempted genocide of the Jews. We survived. The Greeks outlawed Judaism. We survived. 2,000 years ago, the Romans massacred 600,000 Jews. They renamed our homeland of Judea and Samaria Philistinia to stick it to us, to name it after our archenemy, the Philistines. And we survived. In 624, Muhammad's Muslims beheaded 600 Jews, beginning major massacres of the Jewish people. In the first and second Christian crusades against the Jews, massacring large numbers, we survived. They blamed the Jews for the Black Plague. They blamed the Jews for using blood of Christian children for our matzah, and they murdered us throughout Europe for this. But we survived. They expelled us from France and Germany and Hungary and Austria. In 1492, they threw us out of Spain and Portugal. There were pogroms throughout Russia and elsewhere against us. Of course, the monstrous Holocaust, where 3/4 of European Jewry, 1/3 of all of Jewry, were mercilessly massacred. And even in 1948, when we established our little, sacred, holy Jewish state of Israel, 6 Arab countries wouldn't allow it, and they tried to destroy us, invading Israel. We had many losses, but Israel was reestablished as a Jewish state. So they tried and tried throughout history. They fail every time, because the resilience and perseverance and courage of the Jewish people, with the help of Almighty God, we overcame every single attempt at genocide, and we Jews will overcome and survive this latest challenge as well. What lessons need to be learned? Had Israel not forcibly thrown out 9,000 Jews, nobody talks about this, and the IDF from northern Gaza, this tragedy, this massacre would never have occurred. Israel can never give away any more of our holy land to a terrorist Hamas or a terrorist Palestinian regime. Never. Doing so only shows Jewish fear and weakness, and energizes and inspires our Muslim and Arab and other enemies. And it gives them more land from which to better operate their ugly plans. No more concessions. No more concessions. And what else energized the Muslims and the Arabs, the hateful ones? Our U.S. government, Joe Biden, recently, publicly and wrongly condemned Israel for allegedly veering away from democratic values with the judicial reform issue. They attacked Israel's domestic policies. Joe Biden has no business talking about Israel's domestic policies. It's none of his damn business. His administration funded, yes, funded anti-Israel government protests and refused to meet with Israel's prime minister at the White House. This encouraged, energized, and inspired Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah and other terrorist groups that Israel did not have the U.S. as a true friend and a true ally. And this administration has refused, and the Democratic Party, I say this only as a fact, not as a partisan statement, has refused to condemn by name our own Jew-hating Israel haters in Congress, like Tlaib and Omar and McClintock and Presley and AOC and others. Our President Biden has even publicly praised some of them. This, again, encourages and energizes and strengthens our enemies. Almost no Jewish groups, this is very upsetting, complain when our U.S. government, Joe Biden and Blinken and Obama, appointed numerous people to important posts in the government that are hostile to Israel, that are pro-BDS people to important posts. Robert Malley was the chief U.S. negotiator to Iran. He's overtly pro-Iran, anti-sanctions, and pro-Hamas. Maher Bitar, director of intelligence at the National Security Council, used to be executive director of Students for Justice in Palestine, a vicious anti-Semitic group. He used to hold seminars at Georgetown, Maher Bitar did, of how to demonize Israel. And Biden made him director of intelligence. Hadi Amar, the most important negotiator between Israel and the United States, is Hadi Amar. Hadi Amar has proclaimed on a number of occasions the Intifada terror war against his Jews. This inspires me. You hear this? He publicly said, killing and maiming Jews inspires me. He supports BDS. And yet Biden and Blinken and Obama, and I say Obama because many of these people were Obama's friends, and I believe he had a hand in this. And what's most troubling, not a single Jewish group except the Zionist Organization of America said one negative thing about these appointments. Had we screamed against it, he would have to have withdrawn this appointments. And there was nothing but a deafening silence. Nothing but a deafening silence. We cannot allow that in the future. We have to speak out when things happen that are against our interests. We must speak out and scream and not praise and promote. Let me tell you, the Conference of Presidents, the umbrella group of the 51 Jewish organizations, they have not allowed me at certain meetings at the White House or with administration people saying, we don't want you there, Mort, because you keep attacking the people he appoints, and he may not like it if he sees you there. Yes, yes. That's what I and we really have to deal with, of our frightened appeasement Jewish leaders. And Jewish groups, and Deborah Lipstadt, the left-wing U.S. envoy on anti-Semitism, has praised and accepted as a valuable tool, besides the IRA definition, which is a good one. In the official report, they say we also accept the nexus definition of anti-Semitism to be part of our war against anti-Semitism. Deborah Lipstadt, Joe Biden, Blinken accept this. This definition says, if you oppose Israel's very existence, that you're opposed that it should survive, that's not necessarily anti-Semitism. That's what we passed. That's what Jews accepted. Deborah Lipstadt accepted it, and so did all the Jewish groups. Again, we are the only ones who spoke out against it. Our enemies saw all this and were encouraged and energized by our government weakening support toward the Jewish state and toward the Jews. And now Biden says we have to give $100 million to the Gaza Arabs because they're just the innocent civilians. They're not Hamas. They're just innocent civilians trying to make a living and live a decent life, the Gaza Arabs. Oh, really, Mr. Biden? Their own polls from Birzeit University only a week ago 89% of the innocent Gaza Arabs who have nothing to do with Hamas, 89% support Hamas, support murdering Jews, support destroying Israel, and they voted for Hamas to be their leaders. They are not innocent civilians. By the way, you hear my sounds. I say it many times. I have Tourette syndrome, a neurochemical disorder that causes me to make these sounds, unfortunately. And that's why the first woman that showed any interest in me, I married her instantly. I did not want to be alone. And our administration says nothing about these insane rallies. At the rallies, you hear more than anything else, you can't hide. You're helping commit genocide. Genocide against the Palestinian Arabs in 1948. There were 150,000 Palestinian Arabs in the Israel area. Today, it's gone from 150,000 to 2 million Palestinian Arabs. Whoever's in charge of Israel's genocide program must be fired immediately. It's not working. You know, I said that in response to a question about genocide when I spoke at Brown University. The next day in the Brown University newspaper, they said Mr. Klein expressed chagrin that the genocide program wasn't working. Brown University. Fortunately, I did not go to Brown, so I didn't know what the word chagrin meant, so it didn't upset me. So, by the way, and the whole world, including America, are screaming about disproportionate response. When you go to war, you use everything at your disposal to crush your enemy. Everything at your disposal. If I walk down the street and somebody punches me in my face, I only get one punch back. I'll hit him 27 times until he falls down and will never hurt me again. Let me tell you what Colin Powell says about how we should respond when we fight terrorists in Afghanistan, when we were doing that. He said we should use the biggest SOB on the block rule. We should enter fights with every bit of force available to us. We should go in with full force from the beginning, or don't go in at all. We have to use overwhelming U.S. force. And he said we have to use all the force necessary and do not apologize for going in big. America and all generals throughout the world know you use everything you got to destroy your enemy. Everything. And yet, Biden and Blinken and Obama and others are demanding that Israel would pull back. They're demanding that Israel should only fight them for another month or so. We fought in Afghanistan for 7 months. Not 1 month, 7. And in that fight and the fight against Iraq, 150,000 civilians were killed. You don't know that because it wasn't written about. No one said a word about it. Only when Jews in self-defense, inadvertently, unintentionally, in a war, kill civilians, the whole world goes berserk. The whole world goes berserk. What army in the world drops leaflets into neighborhoods and say, get out, we're going to bomb the building? Drops sound bombs that hit the roof to let people know we're going to bomb it, get the hell out. Israel is the only power on earth, army on earth, that goes to those lengths. And yet these people accuse us of genocide. It's the opposite of genocide. We do everything to protect civilians. And we don't have our administration speaking out about this. And let me just finally say, we, the Jews, and the world must understand, this Arab-Islamic war against the Jews is not about land or a Palestinian state. If it was, it would have been resolved in the 30s when they were offered a state in the 30s, and they were offered a state 7 more times. It would have been resolved. This is a religious war against non-Muslims, against Buddhists, Hindus, and Christians. I don't call this a war between good and bad, between barbarism and civility. I am pained to say I call this a religious war. And the president of Egypt, President al-Sisi, recently speaking to Al-Azhar University, the most important university on Islam in the world in Cairo, Egypt, he said to the leaders who are religious scholars and religious Islamic leaders. He said, this is al-Sisi of Egypt. Is it possible that 2 billion Muslim people should want to kill the rest of the world's inhabitants? That's 7 billion people. It's impossible. We are in need of a religious revolution, said al-Sisi. You imams are responsible before Allah. The entire world is waiting. It is inconceivable that thinking that we hold most sacred should cause the entire Islamic nation to be a source of anxiety, of danger, of killing and destruction for the rest of the world. This is impossible. We need a religious revolution. This is the Muslim leader of Cairo, and we shouldn't be afraid to say it. And one way to begin to minimize the Arab-Islamic war against the Jews and others in the West is for countries, especially the U.S., to stop funding, legitimizing, whitewashing, incentivizing the radical Islamic world. And there should be no talk of handcuffing Israel's ability to destroy the Islamic terror groups. No talk. We need a constant worldwide and UN condemnation of Hamas, Abbas, Fatah, Hezbollah, and others. And an end to talk of rewarding Islamic hatred, violence, and terror with a Palestinian state. We have to stop funding UNRWA, which teaches Arab children to hate, to kill, and to murder. We have to stop funding the Palestinian Authority. President Trump stopped the funding. He said no more money until you stop paying Arabs to murder Jews. Abbas pays Arabs lifetime pensions at 5 times the rate of an average salary to murder Jews. And Trump said no more money for that. And Biden came in and increased it from $500 million. We now give Mahmoud Abbas $800 million and ignore the fact that he uses a chunk of that to murder innocent innocent Jewish people. And I must say, I have to say, painfully, I blame in part Israeli leaders, Jewish leaders, and rabbis for not speaking out about the things I've just said, for not speaking out about the fact there is no occupation. There was never a country of Palestine. It was a region. Britain, which controlled this area legally, gave it to the Jews for a state. 40%. All of Gaza was given away to the Arabs by Israel. 40% was given over for autonomy of Judea and Samaria. That's where 99% of the Arabs live, which means there's no occupation. The Palestinian Arabs, the Gaza Arabs, control their own lives, their own parliament, their own schools, their own textbooks, newspapers, radio and TV, businesses, police force. There is no occupation. Why has no Israeli leader said that? Why has no Jewish leader said that except for us? Why are no rabbis not preaching that from the pulpit? And they use this lie in every rally. End the occupation, end the oppression. It's a lie. And yet, none of our leaders talk about it. And we have to stop talking about Jerusalem. Jerusalem is, as many of you know, not only is it never mentioned in the Quran, not only has no Arab leader except from Jordan visited Jerusalem when they controlled it because they didn't give a damn about it. The majority of people living in Jerusalem have been Jews since the mid-1800s, the majority. And they say, well, our prophet has gone from Jerusalem to heaven. It's holy to us. He went from Jerusalem to heaven, our prophet, on a winged horse. Well, if you read the Quran, what does it say? It says Muhammad had a dream. It didn't even happen. It was a dream. And he went from the furthest mosque to heaven. It doesn't say Jerusalem. Jerusalem's a famous city. They could have said Jerusalem. Didn't say Jerusalem. The farthest mosques. Now, how do I know that the farthest mosque couldn't be in Jerusalem where the Prophet Muhammad went to heaven? Because when the Quran was written, there wasn't a single mosque in all of Jerusalem, so it is impossible. Jerusalem is not holy to Muslims, and we, Jews, Jewish leaders, Israeli leaders, and rabbis have to start saying that regularly. No more discussion of Jerusalem. It's ours. It's always been ours. It's never been Islamic. We Jews didn't come to Eretz Yisrael as colonialists. They call us colonialists. We came neither like the British imperialists, nor like the French colonizers in Algeria, nor like the English and Dutch settlers in South Africa. We did not come like immigrants seeking a new continent, a new homeland. We Jews came back home as the inhabitants of a country who we Jews were driven away from it by force. And yet you see the whole world screaming. You're killing it. Kamala Harris only yesterday said, Israel intentionally kills civilians. Yes, she said intentionally. Those are her words. The whole world is saying, stop the attack on this barbarism. Stop the attack on Hamas. The whole world is demanding Israel withdraw and stop. The whole world says we're wrong. Can we be right and the whole world wrong? Well, what is our history on that issue? We destroyed the Iran nuclear reactor in 1991. The whole world condemned us for doing it. It was wrong. Well, they were wrong and we were right. The whole world was polytheistic. We alone, we Jews, preach belief in one God. We preach the day of rest. The whole world mocked us as lazy. We were right and the whole world was wrong. They said we crucified a Jew, Jesus. We never crucified anything. We never would allow such a thing. The whole world was wrong and we were right. They said we poisoned the wells of Europe. We denied it. It was a lie. The Crusades, the blood libels, the Talmud burnings in England and France, leading these nations to expel Jews for centuries. The Spanish and Portuguese Inquisition, the ghettos and the Mortara case in Italy, Dreyfus in France, Baylis in Russia. The whole world condemned us for that. The entire world in all of these cases and more. The entire world was wrong. We Jews were right. And today, once again, we alone are right, and the whole world is wrong about how we're handling the Hamas massacre, the Hamas terrorists. So, I want to end with a quote by Mark Twain. Many of you may know it. It inspires me. Mark Twain wrote about the Jews. The Jews constitute but 0.25% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. The Jew ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world's list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstract learning are out of proportion to the weakness of the Jews' numbers. The Jews have made a marvelous fight in this world at all the ages, and the Jews did it with their hands tied behind their backs. He could be vain of himself and be excused for it. Other nations filled the planet with sordid splendor. Then they faded to dream stuff, never to be heard again. For a while, they held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now. They vanished. But the Jew, we Jews, we saw them all, we survived them all, and is now what we always were, says Twain. We exhibit no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of our parts, no slowing of our energies, no dulling of our alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jews. All other forces pass, but the Jew remains. Our holy Torah promises that we are an eternal people, never to be destroyed. And so it has been, and so it will be, and continue to be. The Jewish people will survive. We must be strong, and we will be. We must be not afraid, for God is with us. The cause of Israel is moral and just. We must act and speak out with courage. Truth, justice, and God are on the side of Israel and the Jewish people. Our holy Torah promises that we're an eternal people, never to be destroyed. So it has been, and so it will continue to be. And with the help of Almighty God, with the help of the extraordinary Israel Defense Forces, with the help of the Jewish people like you in this room and around the world, the people of Israel shall dwell in our holy land for eternity. We will surely prevail. God bless all of you for being here. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.